Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, so
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our executive board meeting. Mr. Attorney, you want to?
yes, this meeting is being recorded and conducted in response to the COVID-19 situation. In order to allow for social distancing, our meeting are being held virtually. Participants and attendees can click on by going to the website and find the Zoom identification information if they wish to attend and participate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Now, how about our Holland and Knight?
Paul.
Hi. So, good.
Hi, good morning. This is Laurie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is Ron on? He just texted me, said he was about to join. He was joining, but I don't see him yet. Okay.
Rebecca, can you bring him out of the guest area and bring him into?
There he is.
There you go.
Glasses. I'm here. How are you?
Morning.
Would you
All
like
right.
for us to begin?
Yeah, Paul, do you want to tee this up and then hand it over to Lori and Representative Klein?
Hi. Good morning. Thank you for having me. So, as you know, that we've been having a lot of interesting activities go on in Washington, D.C. To say the least. Our friends at Holland and Knight have been monitoring those as things have been changing, and letting us know what the potential effects are going to be on our organization and programs overall. So with it, I'll over to Mr. Klein and Ms. Hettinger.
Lori, why don't you go first and I'll pick up.
Okay, sure. Good morning. And Congress is in recess right now. They normally take the month of August off, and then as you saw, they had the conventions over the past 2 weeks. Unfortunately, because they've been in recess and because of major differences between Republicans and Democrats, they have not yet moved on the next COVID bill, the negotiations. They still have not decided. They've not decided on the overall funding level, and so they're pretty still far apart. This is concerning because they're only in town in September for what, 9 days, Ron?
Yes.
Before they recess for the election.
Mm-hmm.
And we obviously, state and locals like yourselves really need to get some COVID funding. So people are very concerned, and they're hopeful that they can maybe come together on a deal sooner than later. Ron, do you have any latest on that?
No, there's no real change on that. The only update on that is the Senate did come back with a bill to counter the HEROES Act bill that was passed by the House about almost 3 months ago. It was a follow-up to the previous COVID bill, which has substantial resources for additional testing and research, substantial money for unemployment. I think you all saw the $600 conversation that was an extension of that, but that didn't happen. The president came back with an executive order, which was $200 plus $100 local match. That has not really played out very significantly in most states. I think the state of Florida has decided it will take the $200. I don't know if they're matching that. That would be an extension of unemployment beyond the end date of August 1. Then the Senate did come back with a proposal. They haven't passed anything yet, of about $500 billion. That's as opposed to about $3 trillion. So they really are, I agree with Lori, pretty far apart. It's all filtered through politics at this point. Both Democrat and Republicans have different views of this thing. The president has a different view of this thing. So unless there's probably some clamoring that's going to push them to act, my guess is if they do anything, it'll be very minor. And the other piece I would just share with you is that the general appropriations, fiscal 2021, the House passed 10 of 12 bills, including the THUD bill, which is the one we care about. The Senate has not taken up any allocations yet, which is the breakdown of how the big number gets divided up among the committees. This is Senator Shelby's responsibility. And they have not had any hearings on any of the appropriations 12 bills on their side. So the thinking there is that a continuing resolution will be adopted at some point when they come back in the short period of time that Lori referenced, to carry the government beyond the September 30th fiscal year end so the government doesn't shut down. I mean, hopefully that happens. That will probably carry through till, I would guess, around December 8th, which would be after the election, and give everybody a time to settle in to see what happens with all that. And then depending what happens, I mean, whether Biden wins or Trump wins or the House and Senate, all that kind of stuff will factor into what they do with it. It is not looking optimistic that they're going to come up with a 21 bill between now and December 31st. But we're still hoping for that, because we obviously want new money. We don't, or new allocations, as opposed to just a carryover from 2020. It doesn't allow anything new to be funded. That's the update.
And then one other thing that they do need to do also is the current transportation reauthorization bill, the FAST Act, expires on September 30th, but that is non-controversial. Everyone supports an extension of it because Congress has not yet identified a funding source for the next bill and has not yet passed a bill. So they're planning to do an extension the very end of September for 1 year, which in the new Congress next year, new administration, or maybe not new administration, that gives them a year to identify funding and to put together a reauthorization bill.
Lori, can I ask one quick question on that? I appreciate it. Is the 1 year extension at current level, do we know, or has there been any indication?
Greg?
Yeah.
So sorry, it may be my internet connection.
Okay.
Could you say it again?
The 1 year, the conversation on the 1 year extension.
Yes.
Does that include current levels, or are they?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I need.
Right.
Thank you. Impacts budget.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything further?
The only other thing I could think, because I think several of y'all applied for build grants, is that DOT has told us they're going to make their announcements on September 15th, the awards.
Good.
That's
Anything else?
awesome. Great.
I wish we had better news and good news and better news and more news, but hopefully we'll have a breakthrough, maybe, fingers crossed, for the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Laura, have you heard anything further about the small business loans again?
No, but they are putting, that is something they do both agree on, extending that PPP program in the bill. So definitely be more money for that. And then also another important factor for all of you is that the Democrats, one of their #1 priorities is to put money for state and local. So I do think if we see a final package, there will definitely be money for y'all.
All right, great. Anything else? Oh, we think.
One last thing, Frank, Mr. Mayor, one last thing on the PPP. To the extent they decide to do it, and there is general agreement they should do something. The question, of course, is how will they, it's not going to be a huge number like they did last time. So how will they allocate it? I think there's a lot of push on small, like real small businesses that really make up our community in South Florida and Broward County, as opposed to larger businesses. There's a separate one for airlines and all that stuff. But as far as that's the effort will be on the real small businesses, because those are the ones who seem to be really running on fumes at this point because they've run out of their other PPP money.
Correct. All right, great. Any questions? All right, thank you all. Great report.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Goodbye.
Let's go to approval of the minutes. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask the motioner to raise their hand and a seconder, and then we'll approve the minutes. So I need a motion and a second for the minutes, approval of the minutes. Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Andy.
Push your button, raise your hand.
I think I saw
Bill
Commissioner Harris.
Bill
Yeah, there you
Harris made the motion to approve. Is there a second? Yvette Colburn, Miramar, second. Good.
There we go.
All right. Any discussion on the approval of the minutes? All right. I'm going to go by unanimous consent. If I don't see an objection, we'll approve it. Mr. Harris, I don't see an objection, so we approve the minutes. All right. Now I'll do the same thing for the approval of the agenda. Push your button raise your hand for approval. Yvette Colburn makes the motion. And Bill Harris seconds the motion for approval of the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda? Questions, All right, again, I'll ask for a unanimous approval if I don't see a hand. Okay, I don't see a hand, so we approve the agenda. Any public comment? All right, hearing none, let's go right into action items. Rick, number one.
Okay, so, Mr. General Counsel, do you want, I'll read this into the record. This is item number one, motion to recommend Broward MPO adopt a resolution of the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization to initiate a conflict resolution procedure set forth in Chapter 164 for statutes. This has to do with the conflict language that has been added to county surtax projects. And I will turn this over to, well, I think who was the speaker on this, Rebecca?
Brian was.
Brian.
Mr. Koletka. Can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
Good morning, Executive Board.
And congratulations, Commissioner, on your position.
Well, I'm not a commissioner anymore, but thank
No,
you.
you're always a commissioner.
You'll always be a
Always
commissioner.
keep the title.
Well, thank you.
He's making the transition over. That was part of the hiring, is that he not only had to obviously step off the MPO.
I'll always be mayor for life.
Well,
Yes,
Mr.
you
Mayor,
will.
you will, in my mind.
So
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Executive Board. So in our language with the county, we have an ILA with the surtax, so an interlocal agreement. And there are two provisions in there for conflict resolution. The first is that the executive director of the Broward MPO meet with the county administrator to try to work things out. That meeting occurred on July 20th with no resolve. The second provision is to proceed with the state 164 process, which is a government-to-government dispute resolution process. It needs to be approved by the full board, but we're seeking a recommendation from the executive board to move forward.
All right, any discussion?
I'll move it.
Let me see it. No, you got to show a hand. Okay, let's have a hand for a motion. Okay, Commissioner Black and Commissioner Harris, seconds. Any discussion?
Yes, I have discussion.
Who's that?
Miss Good, if I can.
Hi, Vice Executive Committee member. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was having technical issues.
All right, all right.
So with the dispute resolution, I just wanted to understand, where are we with the opinion that we requested?
So I can,
Brian or
Mr.
whoever.
Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we requested an Attorney General's opinion, the Attorney General reached out to Broward County and they said they're only going to provide an opinion if both parties agree to get an opinion, and Broward County did not agree. So that stopped that process.
Any good for the questions?
Yes, I guess what I understand that we need to, deal with the issue at hand with regard to this dispute resolution. However, I just want to understand at what point are we then going to discuss the possible outcomes? Are we just going to wait till we have a decision and then have to act on that decision? How is staff dealing with the issue? Because depending on the outcomes, it could be some serious implications for MPO.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through this dispute process, it could go against the Broward MPO, and we recognize that there is a possibility of a loss. And if that's the way it is, we're going to respect that decision.
I understand, but with that decision, should it be not in our favor, there are implications regarding existing contracts with municipalities, potential budgetary issues. So there's a whole host of things. So I just want to understand from my perspective, are we looking at these situations at the same time that this dispute resolution is occurring, so that should the outcome not be a positive one, we're prepared to deal with it in the best way possible. And so I just wanted to know what our next steps were. I know you don't have a crystal ball and you don't know what's going to happen, but I just want to know that we're prepared for a positive or negative resolution. And then at that time, I guess we would be coming back to the MPO for next steps. Is that what would happen?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Brian.
So yes, Madam Vice Chair. Basically, we have two scenarios that we're working out currently in management. We are acting as if everything is as is right now, and we're moving forward. We still agree to the contract with Surtax Services with the county. We're still in active contracts with the cities at this time. If it goes against us, we are looking to reassign staff. There is an impact to the budget, but it doesn't look like we will require a reduction in force, just a reassignment of duties. And even at today's management meeting, we're going to look at some of the reassignments that would be possible so we can bring in a lot of the work that we had farmed out to consultants previously, we would do in-house. So that way we would not require a reduction in staff.
And thank you, Mr. Clark, to Commissioner Good or School Board Member Good. Basically, one of the things that we've prepared for is the City of Fort Lauderdale, which is the largest contract. It's a 5-year contract worth, upwards of more than $2 million over the 5 years with the MPO. They're moving forward with canceling that contract and, based on the county's decision process. And, that was obviously a hit to the way our budget is, but as the Director of Transportation, Mr. Koleka, was actually saying, we're hoping to find, an opportunity to keep the planners that we're hired, that are working on Fort Lauderdale's contract employed with the MPO and make sure that they have not just employed, as Mike and I like to say, it is also a rewarding job, that they actually have work to do and the work is there. So what we've been looking at is the allocation of consulting contracts that we had planned on going to the market, and providing consulting opportunities or the folks in our region to continue those jobs. And unfortunately, that is going to be the decision point of onboarding those particular consulting projects with our team members, as opposed to going out to bid. If we're successful, then we'll be revisiting the contracts with the cities as well, because we don't want to put them in jeopardy, either. And so that's the important thing. I've never weaponized, and just as the 12 years Mike and I have been here at the MPO, and Brian's been on the board for 15, Dick, same thing, Commissioner Blattner. And we've never weaponized federal dollars, to actually have language such as I disagree with you and therefore you're not going to get this. But that is what happened, and we'll deal with it. We're luckily we're in a position that we can deal with it. Had this gone into more contracts and we were in negotiations with 3 more cities, that would have been extremely difficult, financially to overcome the burden that was placed on the organization. It still doesn't make it right, because we were going out to market, with the private consultant firms for these contracts, but it is what it is. So we've tried.
A quick question, and I'm trying to recall conversations that we had at MPO. Did the county ever formally oppose us entering into these contracts with municipalities?
Mr. Koleka.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Vice Chair, no. In fact, one of the things that we did do is we performed an analysis on how the county commissioners voted for the municipal contracts that we have already entered into, as well as the strategic business plan, which we outlined that we were moving in that direction to provide planning services to the cities. And it was unanimous. All county commissioners that were present all voted in favor of the municipal contracts as well as the strategic business plan.
That's a very interesting point. And the last point I have is, and I'm sorry I didn't look at this detail, with dispute resolution, are we required to pay any of their legal fees or anything like that should it not be in our favor? or is it just an equally balanced type of scenario? You know, sometimes when you're in legally challenged, the entity that is on the losing side ends up having to pay fees for the entity on the positive side. So I just wanted to understand, are we obligated in any way regarding that through this dispute resolution, conflict resolution?
Through the chair.
I can respond to that.
Or
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, through the chair, can I recognize, the general counsel, please?
Thank you. So each party is responsible for their own fees at this point, and at this juncture. If we go further, that may or may not change, but at this juncture, that would be the case. We'd be responsible for our fees, and they'd be responsible for their own. If I have the opportunity, I kind of would like to explain a little bit about what the conflict is, because it's important to realize that the conflict is being addressed to the cities through the ILA that was mentioned previously between the county and the municipalities for the surtax-funded municipal transportation for each project. As the cities adopt approval and receive funding from the county for surtax funds for a project, in that agreement, there's specific language that provides for this conflict of interest representations, which specifies for the cities that if the city is involved with any services performed by the MPO, and I'm just going to read there's a number of listings here, but I'm just going to read the ones that are most offensive or problematic for us. Any design, construction, oversight, or management services related to any surtax funded project, so something even beyond this contract, or any proposed project for which transportation or surtax funding is being or will be sought, would be a conflict. Any grant writing or grant consultation services in connection with any surtax funded project or proposed surtax funded project. And finally, shall not apply to any state or federally mandated services provided by the MPO, for which services the MPO does not receive any compensation from municipality beyond municipality's annual contribution to the MPO. So specifically, if we're receiving funding from a city for any services we're providing to them, it's deemed a conflict. And to the cities, the implication is that the city would lose all of its funding, surtax funding for that project and potentially others, any other projects. So it's very prohibitive to the cities, and that's the reason that we're having the issues on behalf of the cities to discuss this and why we've been moving forward in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Good discussion. Vice Chair, did your dog have any questions?
Yeah, actually, she wanted to know what council meant by in this juncture, we don't have it to pay for their fees. What is?
Gabriel?
Well, there's a procedure that we're going through, the 164. This is a mutual agreement that we're going forward now, and eventually we're not successful. That you proceed to go to litigation. So we're not there. That's not where we're at now. Right now, we're not discussing that, but that is what 164 process allows for.
Okay, Vice Chair, any further questions?
I didn't hear all of it, but I'm assuming he said that at this point, no. Should things move forward in a different way? And I would imagine that requires action by the MPO board.
Okay. Mr. Gabriel? Mr. Gabriel?
Alan's frozen.
What's that?
I'm happy. Mr.
Alan,
Gabriel?
Sign back in.
Oh, Alan's frozen.
Yeah, he's
Well,
frozen.
while Alan's frozen, I'm sorry, my last question, Mr. Stewart, I think there was somewhere where I read regarding what other MPOs do similar to this MPO. Are there other MPOs throughout the country that provide these kind of services to local municipalities?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yes, they actually do. And one of the MPOs that does this on a regular basis is actually in Washington, D.C. The Washington COG basically provides that. Mr. Cavarese actually, who does our intergovernmental, has a list of MPOs throughout the nation where this is a very common practice. And one of the things that the federal government typically likes when you do local government planning transportation planning, when it comes to understanding the network and the system. They look for a local match from the local governments to match the federal. It's basically leveraging the federal funds, and that is the concern that we have with the county's language. It's not necessarily the Fort Lauderdale agreement. It's not even necessarily the perceived conflict of interest that they seem to have with surtax projects. It's the overall impact to what is allowable by federal law, and there is no local, there's never been in our research so far, a local government with a surtax that has done this anywhere in the country to an MPO.
Well, I appreciate it. And
Your last
I guess
final
it's unfortunate that the language that went to the voters didn't include one line in there regarding the MPO's interaction, but it is what it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Colburn.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Appreciate the questions Ms. Goods had. It actually addresses some of the things I had in my mind. What are the cities? You say are there 3 cities, or there were 3 potential cities? What are the cities that we have contracts with now?
Well, we actually have more than 7 contracts that we have various contracts. Actually, every one of the cities we have a contract with every city, just for the establishment of the MPO. That is, one of those things, and it actually lays out, what the MPO can do, which includes services like this. Then we also have 7 individual contracts with some of the cities to provide services through our consulting base, as well as through our staffing resources. We have a contract with the city of Fort Lauderdale. That was, a very large contract, but it's a very big city. And we were negotiating with Hollywood and Plantation. Actually, they were going to be coming to the October board meeting for approval. They were going to take that forward. They had budgeted for that. Each city had already put it in their budgets to move forward with. And, we were working with a few others. The logic behind doing this is really to help build the transportation, the MTP, or Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Basically, if you look at Fort Lauderdale, all the major roads running through Fort Lauderdale are all state and federal roads. A couple of counties, but all the counties' facilities run through every state and federal eligible road. So anytime a city proposes basically closing a street off, or building a new shopping center, or redeveloping a former site, that has impacts on our state facilities, and the very thing that the MPO is responsible for. And then also the whole active transportation side of things, which is the complete streets, master plan, and all the rest of it. Those are network things. And these are things that would have been eligible according to the county for funding. So now if we touch any of those things, it becomes questionable based on the language the county adopted. So, that is the problem. But overall, right now I would say it would be about, 10 cities in total that we're actually dealing with directly on conflict language, but in total, it's the entire, all 31 municipalities. But basically, it's what makes up the MPO, because that is a contract as well. And the services that we're allowed to do and charge for are the very things that are in conflict in the language the county has put forward. But, we keep
So it actually impacts all 31 cities. The language impacts all of us.
Ultimately, yes, because you won't be able to leverage any of the federal funds at all for anything.
Okay. So were there did we propose any other language?
Through the chair, Mr. Gabriel?
Yes, we
Still frozen.
Alan, may I suggest if you can hear me, just turn off your camera, and that will lower your bandwidth.
Okay.
You got to get the law firm, give you a little more money for equipment. No, no good yet.
I'm going to go off this. So I'll be out. Well, you can't hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Now you go.
Okay. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. So the question was, I'm sorry, with all the, Ms. Colburn, what was that again, your question?
Did we propose some sort of a language to the county?
Yeah. Actually, I have been proposing alternative language through the county attorney's office a number of times. It has been, every time I have done it, it's been disregarded or objected to. There were indications that they would accept it, but when it went to the county commission for approval, we went right back to what was the original language that was proposed by the county administrator.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Blattner.
Thank you. It's very hard not to be infuriated at the arrogance of the county. But we haven't talked about what happens if we win. Before you answer that, Mr. Stewart, are any of the cities that you mentioned having contracts, Fort Lauderdale and others, willing to approach the county commission or the county administrator? Or are we representing them in our action?
Mr. Gabriel, you want to take a swing at that and then I can talk?
Certainly, I can try. So I have the attorneys.
This is terrible. I can't understand. Maybe Alan could text in.
Yeah, I know. The short answer is the city manager of Fort Lauderdale had reached out to the county administrator because this also affects him and their budget. They were relying on our team members to provide direct support to their commission and their commissioners on transportation issues, and a lot of them, directly impact the state facilities that we are responsible for. We want to see projects delivered in all of our cities, and Fort Lauderdale, unfortunately, had the biggest problem out of all the cities in delivering transportation projects. However, those, his pleas also fell on deaf ears. I do know that several other city managers are concerned, but, like I said, I've never seen the weaponization of the funding, and I don't know of any better way of putting this, is the concern, and I think that's going to be the concern that is going to, be represented long-term. I think some of the cities probably will likely join in this 164 conversation, or at least represent why they were interested in having the MPO provide such services, and the concern on that. But, in the end, it's a take it or leave it conversation that has occurred. And that's the thing that has surprised me.
So let me ask Alan a question, which he may be able to answer from a technical standpoint today. If a city has projects in line for the oversight committee to approve, and that city also has contracts with the MPO, the county has said, well, you don't get your surtax money. If that was the case, then I know this is a silly statement to make, but then why should we be subject to collecting that tax, or the state being able to collect that tax from a municipality that is no longer eligible to receive surtax? I mean, this is absolutely outrageous.
Gabriel, you on?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We'll see. I was trying to dial in again too. So it's a difficult scenario, frankly, for all of us, because we have made the attempts to do what has been suggested, but so far through the administrator's office, we have not had any opportunities or made any headway. The county commission, it's the first time that we're aware, or that they actually took any kind of action, which was at their meeting last week, 2 weeks ago, that they adopted the conflict language as it was proposed to them. We are hopeful that the cities will participate through the process of the 164. They will have the opportunity to to be invited into the hearings and the discussion, and we intend to actually invite them because they are all affected, especially the city of Fort Lauderdale, because they are the ones who are mostly impacted because of the nature of the existing contract that we have with them. But as been stated already, all of our member municipalities will be impacted because we have existing contracts with them for other planning services that may in fact be brought into the conversation as a conflict. And by the way, I just want to tell you that it's not a legal conflict in the sense that that two governmental agencies cannot have a legal conflict. It's a presumed conflict of appearance that keeps being raised by the county. So it's rather difficult to be
Mr. Chair, since Ellen broke up for a second, I would like to let everybody know that's here as well as attendees. Had that language been included in our interlocal agreement with the county to provide surtax services, we would not have entered into that agreement because of our strategic business plan. I would have recommended against it. So, the way it appeared is the even more of a source of concern. And we can argue back and forth all day. We should never be in this type of position. Negotiations are always a good thing. Trying to understand each other's opinions and sides and what each other are trying to accomplish should always be a conversation point. And unfortunately, as Mr. Gabriel has said, I put a lot of faith in the legal because to me, we don't write contracts that aren't legally binding and don't have substantiation in law. And so this is a different thing, and this is an appearance, and that's a very different conversation. And we were willing to get rid of the appearance, whatever it would take to help the county get past this. The MPO staff and our legal team was willing to do. Well, that's nice music. Anyway, so I don't know if Alan's back, Mr. Chair Emeritus. I don't want to be mad at them, and I don't necessarily think we should be, upset with each other. It's just clearly there's a huge miscommunication going on between what the county's intentions are and, really what the federal purpose of an MPO is. And there's nothing here that, to me, shouldn't be able to knock out with a good conversation and actually be able to even bring in experts from around the country so that way our partners at the county can understand what MPOs do. Because that, I think, is part of the problem. And there might be a fear factor there. I don't know.
Okay. Commissioner Blattner, anything further?
No, sir.
Commissioner Furr, welcome, and go ahead.
Where do I start?
With an apology for one thing.
Here, a couple things. First of all, I think it should be recognized that what the county is actually trying to do is make sure that it is a fair playing field for all cities. That is, above all, what I think we want to make sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we asked for the MPO to be, to be helping rating all the surtax stuff, was so that it was all fair, so that we could look each other in the eye and say, okay, everybody's getting their fair share. So that's been the predominant motive through this. And I think, I know I keep talking with Drew, and I know Alan and Drew have continued conversation, and they are, and I think from what I understand, county is continuing to try to narrow the language because, with the contract with the MPO that Fort Lauderdale does have specific things in there about surtax. Other contracts don't have that, from my understanding. That's the only one that does. And that's why that one in particular, the county has some issue with. With regard to the Attorney General opinion, the county didn't say, no, we didn't want, they said that there wasn't grounds for an opinion because it was a positional conflict, but we haven't heard back from that yet. They didn't say they wouldn't join, but they said there wasn't grounds because it's really more of a business decision. Just as a clarification on that. And the other clarification is the meeting with Bertha, I think with that language, it's supposed to be announced first before that. So I'm not sure if that meeting counts. But, you know, I'm okay with trying to do a mediation. I think the whole county is. But in the end, I think what we want to make sure is that no city has an upper hand. And I think that, and I do, you know, I recognize what the MPO has in terms of safeguards on that. I think there's some very good safeguards on that. And you know, I think the county needs to recognize those as well. But what is important is to, in the end, make sure that there isn't any way that one city has an upper hand on other cities. I think all of us, you know, essentially probably would be in favor of that. That's really what it comes down to. So if we can get to that point, I think we'll be okay.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? All right, if nothing, then I'll have a unanimous consent approval if there are no hands raised. I don't see any hand raised, so we'll have unanimous consent. All right, Mr. Greg, can you go to item 2, please? Mr. Stewart.
Let me unmute myself. Next item is actually an action to motion to approve an agreement between the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization and Urban SDK Inc. for congestion management process data analytics in the amount not to exceed $65,000. I have Renee Cross who can speak to this if she can be recognized.
Okay, Ms. Cross.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not Renee. My apologies. Rebecca, who's the speaker to this one?
I thought it was Renee.
Oh, it is Renee? Okay, perfect. Ms. Cross, are you there? And apparently she's suffering from the same dilemma.
Can somebody speak to it?
Yeah, basically what this contract is for us to get the data, congestion data on all of the corridors in Broward and, you know, dealing with the congestion management side. One of the things that an MPO is charged with, and that goes back to our conversation with the municipal government services, is the impacts and congestion on our arterial roadway networks. And what that means, you know, we've done a great job working with the Florida Department of Transportation on dealing with the interstate highway system, but it's our arterial network that is still suffering with, you know, very big gaps in, you know, how we deal with congestion at the local government level. So, you know, that is, you know, one of the things that we're looking for this data set. Mr. Gies is going to actually also pinch hit a little bit for Renee as well, since she's not able to speak or get her speakers working. Okay. With that, Mr. Gies.
Hi, good afternoon, Executive Committee. Mr. Gies here from the Broward MPO Systems Planning Manager. Just to kind of step in and provide a little bit more perspective on this. By federal law, we are required to have a congestion management process. And one of the things that we want to do is kind of go above and beyond and also incorporate some predictive analytics. And what I mean by predictive analytics means that we want to be able to see in the future where our issues are going to be. We have a transportation model that works quite well, but it's not necessary for micro level analysis, meaning that we can't necessarily drill down onto a specific corridor based on certain changes that we make to the network. Yeah. And what this organization will help us do in this particular contract is allow us to really drill down and use existing data sets that are provided by the Florida Department of Transportation, that are provided by programs like Waze, and other citizen provided data to be able to take that data and process it on a micro level scale and on a global scale and be able to pinpoint where we're going to have some issues. We know that in Broward County, one of the issues that we have is that we don't have a whole lot of room for roadway expansion. So by being able to look at where we have pinch points in congestion, let's say at specific intersections on small specific portions of roadway, we can then address those on a targeted basis and not necessarily, you know, resort to massive roadway expansions, but be able maybe to look at smaller scale improvements where we free up some capacity at an intersection or along a smaller segment of roadway in order to help alleviate congestion along that roadway. And this particular company is able to take all of those data sets and put them together for us, and also have a really nice forward-facing interface, much like Google, but with a lot more capabilities and a lot more power behind it, in order to show what that data looks like out to the public and out to you all as elected officials to help you make decisions. So I think this is a very great opportunity for us moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Raise your hand. Okay, Commissioner Beam-Fur makes the motion. Commissioner Harris seconds it. I'll do a unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand.
Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner Fur.
I actually was raising my hand just to ask a question first.
So you didn't make the motion?
I'm happy to make the motion afterwards. But I did have a question.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me get myself in a position of legality. Let me have a motion to approve.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Fur, second by Commissioner Harris. Now for discussion, go ahead, Commissioner Fur.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, Greg, how does this integrate with what was going on with SEPTEC and the big data? Are these two, do these kind of go side by side?
Yeah, they buttress each other. That is correct.
Or is it separate, or do they go together?
Well, this isn't part of the big data purchase that you just signed off of with the SEPTEC agreement. This is for Broward specific to our corridors. Mr. Flavian, I think you wanted to speak to it.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
No.
Commissioner Fur.
Yes.
Executive Director. Sorry. We potentially could integrate this into this piece of software actually, because once we have this, and we actually purchase the big data, which would be happening later on this year. Yeah, once we have that data, we could potentially incorporate it into this as well to be able to help out with the congestion management process. Yes.
Yeah, I would think there'd be a lot of synergy there.
Yeah, there is.
Okay. All right. Good to hear.
We're really excited to be able to find this type of software. Years ago, this used to be, $500,000 to $2 million, anywhere in that, just to have this type of program running. And thanks to technology now, things are a lot cheaper to be able to get into.
And are they gonna work with, in conjunction with where we're putting fiber at the same time along the corridors?
Mr. Flavian, can you answer that? I don't have an answer.
I'm not able to speak to Commissioner Fur.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, neither of us can speak to that. I would hope so.
Me too.
Commissioner Fur, when is the fiber going?
That is on the front end of the entire surtax.
I know that. That's
so it's all going in now.
Actually, I'm sorry, Commissioner. Yes, potentially we could, because if it would be tied into the traffic management center, correct?
Correct.
And all we would actually need is a feed into the traffic management center, and that could be integrated into the urban SDK. It could be.
And I would encourage that to happen.
Okay.
To your question, Mayor,
yes.
My understanding is for the next 5 years, that is being on the front end of the surtax, because I think everybody recognizes that's one of the most important parts to get done.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, I'll take unanimous consent if I don't see a raised hand. All right, so done. So done. So done.
So done.
So done.
Okay, item 3, Mr. Gabriel.
Alan, are you there?
I mean, Mr. Stewart or Mr.
Yeah, I'm going to handle it. It sounds like he's been having a lot of technical difficulty at the office. So this is item number 3, motion to approve a First Amendment between the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization and My Sidewalk, Inc. It's for software acquisition, support, and maintenance. This continues on our big data. And Mr. Flavian, would you like to speak to this item?
Sure. This software actually we've been using since 2017. And really what this is a extension of the contract we already have with My Sidewalk. I believe earlier this year, we demoed the performance measure dashboard that we were created through My Sidewalk. And I think it was, a lot of, we debuted it with the TAC and the CAC and of course the board, and we got a lot of positive feedback from it. We actually also demoed this with FHWA and FTA, and they were really, really impressed with what we are doing. And actually, I know we've been contacted by a number of other MPOs across the country and actually the MPO to the north of us, and they've actually made the purchase because of what they've seen that we have done with this software. So we're very happy with it. And also, I think we developed some municipal profiles for every municipality in Broward, also with this software. And I think our executive director actually demoed that with a lot of the board members and was sending that out. So again, this is an extension of a contract that we already have for an additional 2 years. And it's the total of the, essentially from 2017 to the extension of the 2 years, we totaled $81,000. But really the extension of the 2 years is at $16,000, I think, per year. So,
Yeah.
That's all I have.
And the attorney would want me to point out that this is proprietary software as well. So that's why we would be going with this continuation of this contract. And, you know, I think Mr. Flavian's being very modest. Federal Highway Administration, USDOT, nationally has recognized this as a best practice. And this goes back to, you know, this MPO doing a lot of things that are innovative. And this particular area, and I'll be happy to represent that and, you know, and also come to you individually and show you exactly how the system works and how this data set, because this is just absolutely amazing information that's available to all of our partners, whether it be at the county level, the state level, nationally, or even in the municipal level, because this is stuff that you will need to prepare grant applications and prepare correct type of projects that need to be submitted to fix our congestion side of things. So with that, you know, we're seeking your approval.
Okay, do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Colburn. Discussion? All right, I'll take unanimous consent if I don't see a raised hand. Perfect. All right, let's go on to proposed MPO meeting schedule, Mr. Stewart.
Okay, so this is actually something that the mayor and I have had some conversations about, and I know that I've talked to some of the rest of the board members, not just on the executive, but actually on the full board. And we started looking at ways to try to reduce the number of meetings that, you know, the full MPO board has. That doesn't mean that we're going to be getting rid of the executive committee board meetings. Those are still important for contract work. But as far as the major transportation policy and budget side of things, the full board can actually have a little bit of a break. If you look at the potential board meeting schedule that is presented in one of the attachments, let me see if I can open this up correctly. And this will give, oh, thank you very much, Rebecca. So this gives you an idea of what the rest of the year could look like. So we recommended that the September meeting actually be canceled. We'd go to the October meeting. We have LCB appointments. We have the TIP roll forward, which is the balancing between the July budget year of the state and the October budget year of federal government. And then we have the November meeting off, and then we'd have our December meeting for work program approval and moving that forward. If you look at this type of schedule, this actually reduces the number of MPO board meetings. However, with that said, that means some authority needs to come back over to the executive committee for approval of some documents, and not necessarily taking major authority away from the MPO board, but this does give you a different type of breakdown. What we've learned through the COVID experience is having all 37 members meeting in the chamber is difficult. It's a wonderful experience, but it's hard to keep you all distanced and safe. And so, you know, we've been working with the governor's office on extensions to allow us to continue to use Zoom. We anticipate that that will eventually stop, and that we're going to need to face a different reality, which is keeping you all safe in the boardroom. The general counsel and our team have been working together on even coming up with a hybrid version where we have quorum in the boardroom and the balance of the board members can participate via Zoom. So we're going to be talking to you about that as well. But this particular item is really focusing on the scheduling. What we would have to do if you agree to this is bring this forward to modify the board meetings for this coming year, and then every year in the fall, because we always do a year in advance in June, or actually May, to talk to you about your calendars. And so we'd be using this as the example of when we would be planning on scheduling meetings. This also allows our partners to understand when meetings will be scheduled and when they won't be scheduled. You know, there is always the chance that we could move things around given the board's desire and, you know, events that may occur. But we just wanted to kind of give you what 5 years would look like in advance as far as lowering the number of board meetings. That said, the other thing we would be doing on the days that we canceled the board meeting, we would be having virtual workshops to present items of interest, and the board members could actually, utilizing Zoom, could attend those meetings, and particular if it's areas of projects that are in their communities or their districts. And that way they can attend the meeting and go, oh, okay, I see what's happening with this. And it wouldn't necessarily burden those presentations with the full board meetings. So that way, a lot of the information items that don't necessarily have an action can occur on the days we don't have a scheduled board meeting. So that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know if I've missed anything, Mike, if you'd like to speak to it.
Vice Chair Good. Vice Chair Good, go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Somebody muted.
Yes.
Okay. So I really appreciate this idea, especially during this challenging time. And as you indicated, Mr. Stewart, you said that we can certainly have this kind of model and try it out for this coming year, especially with the situation that we have in place. And then we would, in subsequent years, have the opportunity to reevaluate it, correct?
Mr. Gabriel and Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Vice Chair. Yeah, we would be able to reevaluate it on a year-by-year basis.
Okay. And then your hybrid suggestion of having modified individuals in the meeting room with others virtually, are we able to handle that with our current technology, knowing that even with this meeting, we have situations where we have some problems?
We've been testing it, and we're going to continue to test it. Nothing's going to be perfect until we, perfect it. But we've been working with our, and I use the term Arizona Bob, but the people that actually put in our system in the headquarters is actually at the boardroom, or actually out in Arizona, and they are preparing a modified version where you'd be able to press like A, S, or D on your keypad if you're not at the MPO meeting for request to speak, to vote affirmatively. So it would follow the same way, but that's into the future. But we believe the hybrid model will work. Our partners in Palm Beach have been testing a hybrid version already. They have several members that go to the MPO chambers in downtown West Palm and participate. And then the balance of their board members have been actually in remote. So that has been working well for them. And, we've been following them. Partners in Delaware Valley, which is Philadelphia, they also have a hybrid board meeting system as well. And they use Arizona Bob as well to do their system. And so they've seen positive results from that. I mean, the attendance, even with today's meeting, we have over 38 people attending this executive meeting, and that, what our board, when we have executive, it's usually 3 or 4 people. So, in the audience. So I'm just saying that, we're seeing higher attendees by doing these type of meetings, so we don't want to lose that momentum where people are participating.
And then how about the opportunity for public participation, especially when you have items, the public has to have, an opportunity to speak on any particular item. So how is that going to be handled then?
No different than we have the opportunity if somebody in the public wants to speak here, they raise their hand, we can bring them over. In the virtual world, in the actual physical space, to keep it socially distant, what we've already tested is having the folks, actually the public, sitting in the side area off to, on the other side, and being able to come up to a computer monitor and speak via the computer monitor. They're there, they're physically present, so they can actually register their conversation as well.
And perfect. And that's, it's just important for anyone that's listening to understand that we are going to provide that opportunity for the public to come and physically speak on any particular issue. And then the only other last point I wanted to make, and again, I'm very supportive of this, is, you know, if, for example, if the executive board members, not all could be present, and you have an issue of quorum, who would be the individuals that you would request to come in? So with all these municipalities participating, I think it's really critically important that you have an established type of, I don't know what you want to call it, but order of, you know, calling in, so to speak, of individuals that may be asked to come and participate, you know, physically at the meeting. So, but I'm supportive of it, and I would just ask that you work out those little situations before it goes to the general board.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Just a point of information other than this, they found a 15-year-old student in Dade County who was guilty of the cyber attacks. Just so, just
Yeah, 16.
Oh, I read 15. Must be my computer.
Commissioner Scott.
That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, I think this is an excellent idea. The only thing that concerns me just a little bit is the fact of going the 3 months without a meeting from February to June. That just seems like a really long time. I understand skipping a couple of months, but to skip 3 whole months, is that like kind of stretching?
Well, Commissioner, if I could interrupt, I am sure that if there's something relevant that we have to do, we call a special meeting.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, Mr. Stewart, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is, am I muted?
Okay.
No, I'm on.
Anything
Yes,
further?
that's correct.
Okay. Commissioner Colburn. Commissioner Colburn. Commissioner Blattner.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, Commissioner Colburn, go ahead.
I'm now unmuted. This schedule applies to the full board and or the executive board.
It would only apply to the full board. The executive board would still be meeting what is it, 10 times a year.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Blattner.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I was watching this meeting both on Zoom and on internet because I had notes on there, but I've timed out on the internet. I have to tell you that I'm not really in favor of this. I think there is too much to be gained by the collegiality of being together in a real meeting. I guess I'm okay with a blended meeting, but I don't like the idea of going 2 or 3 months or 2 months, as the schedule would show, without a meeting. And part of the reason for this is because I think that it is an obligation that each member assumes to go back to their community, to their leadership, and say, this is what the MPO is doing that we need to be aware of, participating in, and so forth. I can't tell you how many times that happens or if anybody does it, but that is the obligation that a member assumes when they become a member. And on that issue, I think membership on the MPO is a highlight for any elected official whose commission honors them by making that appointment. And I think it diminishes the value of that membership when you only meet periodically. I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm on the Broward County Water Advisory Board. Commissioner Furr, you are too. In the best of times, we meet every 2 or 3 months. You miss too much, and you try and cram too much in between. So I'm not in favor of this as proposed. I would much rather see us talk about a blended situation, as Greg, you explained that Palm Beach might be experimenting with, which would allow a meeting every month. And if you could make it personally, that's fine. If you can, if you prefer virtual, that's fine too. But I think we need a meeting every month.
Okay, Commissioner Furr.
It's an intriguing idea. I mean, the idea that I could see less of Dick might be good. Just kidding.
You've done so well so
I
far.
know. But I do like the idea. If there was a way of constructing where we could make this really educational, where there were elements that I think, because all of us have a lot of gaps in our knowledge and in the entire process and everything that's going on. And if we were able to propose how people kind of, it's almost like having 101 classes on various things. All of us really could benefit by that. If this could be done when we have our there's a lot of ringing going on. When we have our yearly forum, there's we get a chance to kind of interact with each other a lot more. It's like a game show. Right? Is everybody else hearing all that thing?
No,
No? Okay.
I'll turn off.
Oh, okay. But I think that would be helpful. I still hear it. That, I can barely think with all that going on. That's the one thing that I think would be good. If we could do that, I think it would be beneficial for all of us. And then I think that blend would be okay.
All right, Commissioner Furr, thank you. I happen to, Mr. Stewart proposed it to me. I happen to like the idea. Can always embellish different aspects of it, but I certainly do like it. I see a couple of hands who already spoken. Do you want to speak again? Vice Chair?
I do.
Go ahead.
I didn't know if Ms. Commissioner Colburn was speaking.
No, you can go ahead. They called you.
Okay. No, just real quick. I just think that that just right now, if we could minimize having a large number of individuals, and still function as a board, I think it's prudent. We have over 30 participants, and then staff, and then the public. I think that if the wish is to meet more frequently, I think that's fine. But to allow staff the opportunity to at least try this, at least for the next couple of months, I think is more than the right thing to do in light of everything going on. If it could be done, I support it. Thank you.
Commissioner Colburn.
I do support less meetings. I like the educational component that was mentioned in between the meetings. And I do think that if we could definitely do something in April so that we won't go that long period of time without any types of meetings. So I would definitely like to see maybe open up April, but I'm good otherwise. Less meetings, if we can get the business done at the same time, it works for me.
Okay, remember the legislature this year meets March through May. We're back to that schedule. Okay, let me have a motion for this proposal of approval. Raise a hand. Commissioner Colburn and Vice Chair Good, motion and seconded. Okay, although if you're not in favor, please raise your hand. Commissioner Harris is not in favor. Any others?
Blattner.
I don't see it. I don't see your hand, Commissioner.
There we go, right there.
In fact, I don't, no. Raise your hand on the computer.
Mayor,
This is not Hollywood.
For the second, to make the second motion, not to oppose.
I'm sorry?
I had my hand raised to second the motion, not to oppose.
Okay, got it. All right, Mr. Blattner is the only negative vote. Commissioner Blattner, I see it now.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, let's go to fair interoperability update. Mr.
Okay,
Stewart.
thank you. And I just, Chad, are you standing in for Renee, or is Renee speaking to this?
I believe I am, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chadwick Blue will speak to us today on fair
Michelle?
interoperability.
Hi, good morning, Chairman Wardis and members of the Executive Committee. My name is Chadwick Blue. I'm a Project Coordination Manager here at the Broward MPO, and I am the Project Manager for the Fair Interoperability Project. So as Mr. Stewart mentioned, I'm here this morning to provide a brief update in regards to what has been happening with this project. I had last come before you, the Executive Committee, in March. So with that said, let me see if I can share the PowerPoint I've prepared, and we'll get into it. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. All right. So I think it's important to start off this morning just to discuss what the actual goals of this project were. And so the main goal has been to provide transit riders with the ability to plan a trip, pay for fares, and reload value through an easy card or something on their mobile device for multiple transit providers, which included BCT, SFRTA, Miami-Dade Transit, and Palm Tran. As a recap, this was a project that was funded with $3.6 million from the Broward MPO of FTA money. And currently we've spent down about 1.7 million that the county has invoiced us for. And we've got a remainder of about 1.9 million. So in addition to what I just mentioned being the project goal, BCT was also able to deliver the installation of new up-to-date, sorry, that wasn't me. BCT was able to update their existing fare boxes with new technology that would allow for contactless payment. And they are also able to launch a mobile ticketing application. So those two have been done. But in addition, the project goals are to continue to be good stewards of the remaining federal share of the money, which as I mentioned was 1.9 million. And we want to continue having a positive working relationship with both BCT and the FTA. So this is a project that has come up during the last two federal certification reviews that the MPO has had. The last one was in 2019, and you can see that the federal review team commented and said, the TPO and transit providers are commended for their efforts associated with the coordinated interoperability of projects. While it appears that significant progress has been made, the federal review team encourages all agencies involved, including the MPOs, to continue to coordinate the implementation of this initiative. And the same thing, something was similar was said in 2015, where I won't read the whole thing, but the federal review team recommends that the MPO continue to work with the other two MPOs to develop and support the implementation of a strategy for a universal fare card for the Miami urbanized area. So every time we have a review with the federal government, they zone in on this project and they really see the value for it. And again, it's definitely on their radar. This is a brief project history. And again, I won't necessarily read all of these items to you, but you'll be able to see kind of where we started back in May of 2014 and all the various amendments that have taken place over that time. Now, there was a few amendments that involved scope change, but the majority of them have been for time extensions. And if the executive committee members had a chance to read also the memo that accompanied this item, that gives a even longer brief, detailed history on kind of what all these amendments were for. But I just want to impart on the executive committee that many, many time extensions have been given to BCT to complete this project. Moving on to the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, I had last come to you on March 5th of this year to give the executive committee an update and to seek their guidance. At that time, our existing subrecipient agreement with Broward County had expired. It expired on March 31st. And Mr. Chris Walton had submitted a letter to Mr. Stewart at that time requesting an additional extension. And the reason that was given for this was that BCT needed to enter into interlocal agreements with SFRTA, Palm Tran, and Miami-Dade. And so they requested additional time. And so at the direction of the executive committee, we continued to work with BCT staff on this amendment. And unfortunately, it got caught up in the COVID-19 was really taking off during that time. And the county lost a good bit of time that they weren't really able to focus, according to them, on this agreement because they were so busy trying to get their transit operations in order with sanitation and the like. And so during that time, as I mentioned, staff continued to negotiate with BCT, but we also used the Broward MPO's reasonable progress policy that had been developed and I believe presented to the executive committee by Mr. Peter Geese in the not so distant past as a template to kind of put this project into a path for corrective action. And as one of the items also that hopefully the executive committee was able to review as part of their backup is a project and trouble action plan that we based the policy of the reasonable progress off of. Now this project action plan, it details what the expected performance of this project was to be. It talks about the goal, the actual performance, what we've accomplished or what BCT has accomplished to date, and what sort of performance gaps exist in terms of where we are, where we need to be, how do we conclude this project, along with action steps and consequences. And I'll get to those in a moment as well. The issues that we ran into when we were negotiating the Fourth Amendment with Broward County Transit was are listed here in this slide. First, we tried to, based on Mr. Stewart's recommendation to the executive committee in March of this year, we sought to include clarifying language in the amendment stating what exactly the project goal is and what we're trying to accomplish. Now that's part of the scope of services that you'll see here. Secondly, we included, or we asked BCT to please provide us with a detailed schedule. We offered them 2 years actually of additional time that would take the existing, or I should say the lapsed agreement, all the way to March 31st of 2022. And so with that, we'd asked for a detailed project schedule from BCT, which they provided. As part of that, we were going to attach that schedule to the amendment, and we included thresholds of payment. And that was essentially milestones that needed to be met or that we wanted to see the county met before they could draw down on the remaining 1.9 million. Also, we included language where we offered all of the MPO staff that Broward County needed in assistance with any non-administrative item. If there was anything at all that we could help them do to push this project forward, just because we didn't want to necessarily continue to have to report to the federal government that there had been delays in this project. And as you'd seen from the previous slide, since 2014, we've been trying to kind of close this item out. In addition to that, we asked for bi-weekly phone calls with the project managers and monthly progress reports to be included. Just anything to improve the communication. We wanted to know anytime there was any delay to the project that was going to impact the schedule that they provided us. So again, that we could offer our assistance where it would be appropriate. And lastly, we had included some language that was based off of Broward County has their own corrective action plan language because they are a direct recipient of federal money that then they give out to municipalities. And when a project is in trouble with the county, they have their own set of compliance language that then they try to reinsert and kind of wrangle in some control over the project. So we took some of the existing language that they had used with some of their previous grants with other recipients and tried to include those in the amendment with Broward County for the Fourth Amendment. This next slide shows the letter that we received, or that Mr. Stewart received on July 28th from Mr. Chris Walton from BCT, where essentially the county said that they didn't want to talk about anything besides a time extension. And so the clarifying language that I'd mentioned that was intended to clarify what the intent of this project was, the county sees as a scope change. So they didn't want to necessarily even negotiate that. And then as you'll see from the bulleted, or the 1, 2, 3, 4s, the threshold of payment was a non-starter with them, as well as any discussion of MPO staff assisting in the project, and the grant reimbursement process, which would be also the thresholds of payment. So with that said, again, here's another slide that shows you what we were actually able to accomplish during those negotiations. The X's were things that were not permitted or that BCT did not want to negotiate with the MPO. And the check box is, of course, what we were actually able to get, which was the time extension. And with that said, and maybe I'll back up just real quick. One of the major stumbling points, and Commissioner Furr had mentioned it in the March meeting, is that the holdup at the end of the day is it appears to be a political issue. It's not a technological issue as far as I've been able to research with the various other transportation providers with PalmTran, SFRTA. The issue is relating to the back of the office accounting for what amounts to a regional bus pass that BCT has been trying to negotiate with Miami-Dade Transit and also PalmTran and SFRTA. And again, the sticking point is that there appears to be two large fare payment systems that most of the transit vendors use. The largest is Cubic, which I believe BCT used to use, and then they moved to GenFare, which is kind of the second largest fare payment vendor. PalmTran and BCT utilize GenFare, while Miami-Dade Transit and SFRTA utilize Cubic. And there are ways to interlink the systems, but so far in the discussions, it appears that Miami-Dade has wanted to kind of handle all the money, if you will, for these transactions that would occur on a monthly basis, and then issue either IOUs or something similar. And the other transit providers have not necessarily been comfortable with that and have wanted to handle their own reconciliations of their own funds each month. And so with that said, it does appear that it's a political issue and not necessarily a technological one. But going back to the Project in Trouble Action Plan that we've come here today, or I have to discuss with you and get any comments or feedback from the executive committee, is that staff is recommending the following steps in order to try to move this project along, because again, we're kind of at a stalemate with BCT, and again, we've identified this as a project that is in trouble and needs some further corrective action to address its performance at this point, so that we do not run afoul with the federal government. So the first step is that we have a draft letter prepared to submit on behalf of Mr. Stewart to the county, where we're asking for the additional language to be included. We're asking the county to reassess their position and to please accept the changes that we're proposing. Staff is recommending a deadline of September 15th for this, and that would allow us to conclude negotiations, which have been going on for a number of months, with BCT and the county in order to get this onto, if done successfully, the October Broward MPO board agenda. Now, if this step is not successful, staff is recommending that we would move to item number 2, which would be to explore other options to achieve fare interoperability. Right now, FAU is currently working on their own mobile application called Move Up. And from the preliminary discussions that staff has had with FAU, it appears that they are moving towards elements of fare interoperability that would satisfy the promise that we've made to the Federal Transit Administration regarding utilizing partial parts or maybe all of the remaining 1.9 million. So that's another idea that we had. And if that's not successful, we move to step 3, which we would work with the FTA to repurpose the remaining $1.9 million for such other MPO projects, such as mobility hubs or any number of other items or programs that we currently have. And with that said, I'd like to open up to any questions the group may have on this.
All right, thanks very much. Let me just make a comment. I favor the proposal. It was a good presentation, by the way. I favor the proposal that you said. The county commission has to get BCT under control. And I'm a real docile guy at times, but we had nothing but trouble with them when we built our city center here in Pembroke Pines. I'm not a fan of Mr. Walton. I'm not a fan of BCT. And Commissioner Furr knows that. Somebody needs to get this organization under control. So with that, Commissioner Blattner, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to go back in history and tell you I was 12 years old when we started talking about this, and the issue hasn't changed. It was always the...
I thought it was 30.
Yeah, well, so my point is this. First of all, Chadwick, that was a great presentation. Very, very comprehensive and easy to understand. I think we're going to end up at step 3, because I don't think that there's any evidence that the counties can agree on a system that would work for both of them. When I go back, when I was on the SFRTA, it was Dade County that was assigned the responsibility of developing the back of the room operation. Hasn't done. So I'm going to support your recommendations moving forward, the incremental parts of it. But the only question that I have, Chadwick, is at what point, time-wise, would you implement step 3, or would you recommend step 3?
Mr. Blue?
I'm sorry. Yes, if I could address that question real quickly. The entire action plan is a 90-day action plan. So all of these steps would be concluded by the end of by October 31st, which meant we would have investigated the second step and then moved on to alert the FTA of our intention and to start the process of repurposing the money in trams and with the FTA at that point.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Commissioner Furr, can you get BCT under control?
Let's try to do that. I thought I'm actually disappointed because I thought that we had that we were really close, and I'm not sure what right before COVID stuff. So I thought, you know, and I know BCT was going to need to make a concession, and I thought they were prepared to do that. So I need to go find out. One thing I'd like to do is change the date on that, Chad, if you don't mind, to September 23rd.
Yes, sir.
And I say that because what I'd like to do is put this as a discussion item on the county, so that we can try to move this. We have a meeting on the 22nd. We have a meeting on the 10th, but I don't think that's enough time for me to put something together and the agenda's already out. So I would like to ask if we change that to the 23rd. I think we can move this along. So I'm going to remain optimistic because one, it's too important. It's too important not to move along. This is absolutely necessary for all 3 counties, for mobility for the entire regions, and we got to hammer something and get through this. So I'm going to ask the board to consider a later date. And Greg, remind me on something, if you would. There was some point that and it had to do with a money issue. It was like a $2 and something issue that the county had to concede on. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I think there's, and this goes to the back of the house operations stuff.
Okay, all right.
I want to be very frank. I mean, our whole point of this isn't, and this is where it's gotten lost, I think, is not necessarily that Miami-Dade would collect fares for Broward County. I mean, that wasn't, or SFRTA, you know, Miami-Dade collects fares for SFRTA. That wasn't the point of this. The point of this is just, I can go from a BCT bus to Tri-Rail to MDT, you know, with my phone. I mean, I agreed with Chris, this is a great idea to go forward with that. I see this always getting lost where the transit operators get into their private business. And you know, Commissioner Blattner brought it up when he was on SFRTA years ago. This was always a point of contention. And this is why I wanted to clarify with the county, with BCT, that wasn't our intention. And they don't need to focus on that, because the more they focus on that, the more they get into arguments with Miami-Dade and Tri-Rail.
But there was a particular stumbling block.
Yeah, and that goes back to this fair. They want to have a regional fair, and I think Miami-Dade's looking for that. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
But that isn't the point of this. This is just for, it doesn't really matter how much it costs in the end. It's,
right.
I need to go from one vehicle to another vehicle. It needs to be seamless. They do this in Virginia. We all fly to Washington, D.C. You can go from the metro on DC into Virginia, into Maryland, through the district, and they all communicate with each other. I'm sorry, I'm going to use WashCog again as a good example of the way our MPO should be looking at things. And there's no reason why our transit providers, and we have 4 of them here, they have 7 there, can't figure this out. But I don't want to get involved, and I told that to Chris, with their back of the house operations. Their accounting is their accounting. Let them have what they need to do. All the rider needs to know is, I was on Tri-Rail and now I can get on BCT. And that's pretty much it.
Right, but there was something that the county needed to just concede on.
Well, but I don't. But that was with Miami. Yeah, that's with Miami-Dade. It was this.
That's what that was.
Yeah, it's not part of our request to them.
I know.
And it keeps on getting.
But it wasn't. It wasn't that big a deal. In my mind, for it to go through.
Given the
fact it was a concession, but it was like, it's worth it.
And given the fact fares are free right now on almost everything, at least on Tri-Rail and MDT. So,
okay.
Anyway. In your hands.
Okay, let me try to get it on the 22nd
no objection to
agenda.
Date change?
No, there's no problem with us.
Okay.
If there's forward momentum, that's all we need.
Okay.
All right. Review and discussion of future agenda, Mr. Stewart.
Well, the good news is, that this is just a placeholder on the agenda. We don't have really much going on there. We will have a workshop after the October board meeting on funding, and that will end up moving forward. And then on non-agenda, Mr. Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to bring up, I'm a planner, and that's what my background is. I have 2 years and 4 months, or actually 3 months left before I can basically go at 30 years of retirement. Mike, my chief of staff, has less than a year. We're going to actually start facing the reality of a change in the operation. One of the reasons why we brought on Mr. Koletka, one of the reasons we're bringing on Carol Henderson to also help us, is to start that transition planning. And I want to be able to make sure that you guys are aware of what is going on and why we're doing what we're doing. I'm going to have to spend much more time in the near future filling in where Mike has been great at managing the team members and the plans and balancing all that, because he and I are very simpatico when it comes to how the operation should run and making sure that the team members have fulfilling jobs, and that we accomplish the things that we accomplish. Bringing on Mr. Koletka was the idea that he would help with the elected officials. His 15 years serving on the board, and one of the things I learned during that time traveling with him to many different events is he was able to distill the technical down to the policy level for the board members in a great way. And so with that, I just wanted to put that into your heads, so that way you understand where we're going with the structure and how it's moving. I'll be in communication the entire time with you all, but I think it's time to, at least have that preparation conversation, because with Mike's, retirement, April, June, whatever it may be, I'm going to have to take a much more active role on that side of the organizational chart as well. And that's going to have, where Brian is going to step into a lot of other roles as well, because I also represent us nationally and at the state level, and that takes a lot of time. I'm going to be really honest with you, it really does, but it is to the benefit of our organization and our county and our region that we've been able to do that, because we are able to get the support from USDOT for everything that you can imagine and be recognized. And that makes, if there is a transition in Washington, D.C. this fall, that will make us be much more competitive with receiving funds that would normally go to Kentucky. With that, if you have any questions, let me know. And, but I want to kind of build the expectation so you understand where we're headed.
Great. Okay. Hearing nothing else, our next meeting is October 1st. So we'll have a motion to adjourn by who's calling? Gabriel.
Finally, I started the meeting and now I'm ending the meeting with you. I just, frankly, Mayor and committee members, I'm not sure what happened. I understand that Zoom was having difficulty, and of course it was only me that had difficulty, but I apologize for anything that may have happened and whatever I might have missed. Just so that you know, my partner David Tolstas from the firm has been watching the meeting as well, and he'll be able to fill me in on whatever questions that may have come up, that if we need to supplement any of the responses that she may have gotten that may be necessary. But I just wanted to make sure that she realized that I'm here and I will deal with whatever I have to. And again, I apologize. Have a great day. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Harris?
Hold on one second.
Are you elected again?
Oh.
He just muted himself. Commissioner Harris, you muted. There you go.
Yes, I just want one follow-up question to anyone who knows. What are we hearing about the Bright Line?
Mr. Stewart?
Okay, well, that actually, last night I was in a conversation with my partners in Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade is moving forward with a commuter rail option. They are bringing it forward to the county commission. Their county has actually put in place basically TIF funding districts along the corridor to allow the local governments to tax the increment around where the stations will be located. They've already funded Aventura. They're going to be doing Wynwood. They're going to be doing Miami Springs. I can't remember which of the names of the cities along the corridor, but they are moving forward. I'm not sure if they're going to be bringing Tri-Rail into the operational component or not, but they are still in negotiation, but agreed that they will find one, an access service fee. But, I have also had private conversations as well. It was a public meeting, so I'm going to expose them. But with the Broward Workshop folks, and I know Commissioner Furr has also been, working on his side to try to figure out, but Miami-Dade is ready to rock and roll and move forward. And we're hoping that, our friends at Broward County will also join as Miami-Dade moves forward, because that's, while we're stymied by the new river crossing, we can at least get service up to Broward General, if not the courthouse, if Miami-Dade is moving forward within the next year or two.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, Bill?
Yes, Commissioner Furr.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussions going on, Bill. A lot of this is going to require some master planning in Fort Lauderdale based on the new river, whether or not we're looking at a bridge, tunnel, etc. We are keeping our eyes very carefully on what's going on with Miami-Dade, because whatever access costs that they finally settle on will be kind of a benchmark for us. But what we're going to have to be looking at is whatever cost we're doing with the bridge or the tunnel, that be defrayed in terms of access costs, things like that. Okay. So lots of discussions. I'm actually pretty hopeful about it. But it is, the first things first, we really do have to figure out tunnel or bridge, and then kind of go from there. But what is being asked right now is for a joint meeting between Fort Lauderdale and the county. As you know, we're probably thinking of doing a joint campus, but that needs to be thought of holistically. And in terms of how does Brightline, how do we integrate that into that, as well as the east-west corridor on Broward Boulevard? How does that all get integrated? And once we can think of that, then we can kind of go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, may I also, Commissioner Furr, and you bring up a really valid point that needs master planning.
Yeah.
And, we were under contract with the city of Fort Lauderdale, obviously, as a transportation organization. That would have been something we would be working on. And this just goes to, the number one discussion of why I think that, we need to find a better way to work together, because that should be surtax eligible as well. It should be something that we would be working with the city. We need to be working with the state. The MPO is the agency that you're going to need to get the federal dollars to build a bridge, tunnel, whatever it may be.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, and with us having contracts with the cities along those corridors, which was Hollywood, which is why we were moving forward with that. You know, there's a lot of other conversations. I don't necessarily.
There's absolutely a role with the MPO on this.
And we may need to leverage.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
it's going to require on the master planning a role for MPO, for the architects, for land use, for a number of things.
And for us to leverage our federal funds
Yeah,
now because
absolutely.
of, but this is the other point though, Commissioner, is the city of Fort Lauderdale was buying down our leverage costs. And now with us having to assume the debt, you know, this becomes the conversation. I mean, there wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, I think they recognize the genesis of some of the master planning is absolutely those federal dollars.
Yeah.
But they can't, you know, they have to make the decision between the tunnel and bridge. You know, they can't go another step till there's a final discussion, a determination on that. And then what do you go forward? Because I think FDOT,
yeah,
I think FDOT is waiting for that decision before they can take that next step.
Right, and FDOT can't move forward without the 3 MPOs, at least Miami-Dade and Broward,
Yeah.
to, you know, approve and do what's necessary. You know, my point going back to, this is where that dichotomy of who moves first and how, and this perceived conflict of interest and all the rest of it, I really, I find the conversation, you know, I don't think it's well thought out. And every time we've had this conversation, with county staff, it just gets worse. So
well, I think when there's a joint meeting between the county and the city, a lot of this has a chance to be kind of brought up. What, you know, how do we approach this, all of this in the best light and to the best benefit for everybody? So.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Any further?
That help, Bill?
I'm sorry?
I was just asking Bill if that helped.
That helps a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner get elected.
Yeah, the signs.
Okay, great cooperation from the board. Always a pleasure. Thank you all. We'll see you at the next meeting.
All right. See you guys later.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.